We come now to the morning plenary session on the Solicitors Qualifying Examination. Can I ask Julie Brannan, who is the Director, the SRA Director of Education and Training, to come to the stage? And can I also bring on, I see that she's coming, Sarah Hutchinson and Toby Seddon. We'll introduce them in due course. Now, Julie will be providing the opening of this session today on the Solicitors Qualifying Exam, the proposals for which the SRA have just launched the second phase consultation of. So without further ado, I'll welcome Julie.
So thank you very much, Clive, and hello everybody. So the Solicitors Qualifying Examination, the SQE, you've already heard Paul mention it. What is it? Well, what we're proposing is a single set of assessments that everybody who wishes to qualify as a solicitor would have to pass. So if you like, a national licensing exam that enables us to check that on admission solicitors have the high standards that they need for safe practice. How have we got here? Well, the journey started really with the Legal Education and Training Review, an independent review set up by the SRA with other legal regulators looking at education and training across the sector. And what that told us is that we could do better at assuring consistent standards and also permitting greater flexibility in how students learn. In response to that, we published the Statement of Solicitor Competence, setting the standard for practice, and then, as Paul said, we published a first consultation just under a year ago on a solicitor's qualifying exam, where really what we learnt was that people needed more information, more detail about our proposals. And so we've just launched our second consultation where we've set out the detail of the assessment, and we've also explained how the assessment fits into the wider training context. But the most important message is that at every step along the way, we've gone out and listened to people, we've talked to people, we've heard from individual solicitors, from firms, from universities, from members of the public. And the consultation proposals that are out at the moment take on board all that feedback and include all of that information and those views that we have heard. Why do we think we need the SQE? Well, we think that the SQE is the best way of addressing those twin concerns of greater consistency and assurance of standards and greater flexibility of learning. We think that it will give us a high quality, rigorous, fair and consistent assessment, and we think that this will underpin the standing of the profession both in this country and internationally. We've benchmarked the assessment internationally, and we know that in many of the leading jurisdictions across the world, they have a centralised bar exam, so we're moving in line with that. We've also talked to people, to members of the public in this jurisdiction, and 3 out of 4 of the people that we spoke to said that a single assessment would enhance their confidence in the solicitor's profession. But we also do think that it will enable us to be more flexible about our requirements leading up to qualification. And we think that this will enable us to address the high cost of qualifying as a solicitor at the moment, which is of concern to lots of people. There are 4 elements to what we're proposing. What we're saying is that in order to qualify, everybody would have to have a degree or equivalent qualification. They would have to pass the SQE, which would be in 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2. They'd have to complete a substantial period of work experience, and they'd have to meet the character and suitability test. The 2 stages of the SQE would be, first of all, a knowledge test, where we would check that people could take their legal knowledge, their knowledge of the law, and use that knowledge of the law to address clients' problems or in the context of transactions. And we would integrate procedural law and black letter law. So it would be criminal law and criminal litigation, contract and tort and civil litigation. It would be land law and conveyancing. The questions that we would ask would not be a simple procedural question, what searches should you do at this point in the transaction? It would be, these are the results of your searches, what does that mean for your client, what should you do? The next stage would be a skills assessment where we, as you can see, we would assess the core legal skills that solicitors need to have. So in the context of a client interview, we would assess whether a candidate could take the relevant legal principles and use those in order to work out what questions to ask their client, what information they need to elicit, whether they could handle a client who was upset or forgetful or who didn't trust them. So a skills test at point of qualification. Now, as we've said, we wouldn't specify particular preparatory training for the SQE, although we would say that everybody had to have a degree or equivalent. What we think that does is that it gives universities the opportunity to use their expertise, they are the experts in teaching and learning, to develop courses that met the needs of their students. It would also enable students to look out and look at the range and possibly a wider range of ways of learning and choose the course that best suited their personal circumstances. We would provide information about courses, we provide pass rates on the SQE so that that information could help guide student choice. And we believe that this would develop a competitive market, competitive legal market, legal education market, and inject greater flexibility in the ways candidates trained. So we wouldn't specify particular pathways, but we do expect that standard routes to qualification would emerge. And they would be probably in this sort of pattern. So we would expect that people would take a degree and that towards the end of the degree or immediately afterwards, they would take SQE1. Probably before they went into the workplace to do their work experience or their period of recognised training. We expect that there would be a substantial period of recognised training, and then at the end of that there would be SQE2, which would assess their legal skills. There would be lots of patterns and varieties around that basic model. Some universities would integrate the preparation for SQE1 into their law degrees. Others might not. And in that case, then students might have to take an additional preparatory course to teach them the conveyancing, those sorts of subjects that would be needed for SQE1. That takes me to work experience. And the first and most important thing to say about that is that we think that work experience is a really fantastic way, a really important way of learning the skills that you need to be an effective solicitor. So we would be continuing to require that everybody had to complete a substantial period of work experience, probably 24 months as at the moment, but certainly no less than 18 months. And we'd be interested in your views about that. How long do you think that period of work experience should be? And it should be in a regulated entity or under the supervision of a solicitor. And it should be work experience which enables candidates to develop the competencies set out in the solicitor's competence statement. What we would ask firms and supervising solicitors to do is to sign off not that candidates have met or have developed, have achieved those competencies, but that they have had the opportunity to do so. And that would enable us to ensure that standards were consistent at the point of qualification. I think this enables us to be a bit more flexible about what we require in relation to work experience. Our focus, as I said, would be on candidates developing the generic competencies in the competence statement. So it would enable us to move away from the current requirement that everybody has to do 3 areas of practice and both experience in contentious and non-contentious law. The solicitor's qualification is undoubtedly a broad one, and the SQE1 would assess all the reserved activities. SQE2 would test that candidates' legal skills were transferable. But we think we can also recognise the value and the learning that happens in a wider range of contexts. So time spent as a paralegal, in a placement in a law firm as part of a degree, in a student law clinic, as well as in a traditional training contract, all of those could count. And we also think that experience spent either in a single employer or in a number of employers could count. So we could use this to inject that additional degree of flexibility. Next steps. Well, the current consultation closes on the 9th of January. So the first most important message is please, please do respond to that. Let us know what you think. We'll then take those responses to the SRA board and ask for a decision in the first half of 2017. And we would introduce the SQE not before September 2019. At that point, clearly there will be people who will be part-way through training, and what we would say is that anybody who has started to train, who has started a QLD, a qualifying law degree, or subsequent stages of training before September 2019 would have the choice to continue on the old system or to move to the new system of training. But anybody who started in or after September 2019 would have to move to the new approach. So there you are. Those are our proposals.